In 2020, we have just seen one major disaster after another all over the world, and many of these disasters have directly affected global food production. In America, the economic downturn has triggered another kind of emergency that is unleashing food insecurity for millions of Americans. Food banks across the country have reported skyrocketing demand this year as widespread unemployment has crushed low-income households. Higher food prices, higher asset prices, and no jobs. Wars and rumors of wars, famine, pestilence. Hard times are here now. Welcome to the Mad Max world. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class has to work twice as hard to stay middle class. Great job, Fed. Keep up the hard work, increasing wealth inequality. Not enough jobs. We see an endless pursuit of the cheapest possible labor, eliminating people whenever possible except in the executive suite. Sending factories overseas, and bringing in foreigners for things like meat processing. Higher H-1Bs visas for the high-end jobs you can't send to India. First, we shipped our manufacturing base overseas. We automated what remained as much as possible. Now we're automating distribution and retail. Big box stores, food stores, and anyone that can, are now installing self-checks. We're sending accounting functions to India now. At the upper end, you're seeing computers replacing traders and take over white-collar functions. The jobs that remain are paid less in real terms than they paid 20 or 40 years ago despite massive productivity increases. Less people working, and those that are getting paid less. Fewer people can afford to buy things. It's a downward spiral. And the truly wealthy, they're making money faster than they can ever spend it, even with Bentleys and Gulfstreams. Those purchases don't create many jobs. We're in the midst of the greatest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in human history. Buckle up, it's only going to get worse from here. The oligarchs have worked the system to perfection. The goal of the psychopaths in charge, consisting of the bank cartel and its minions in government and corporations, is to reduce the population to two castes. The masters and the slaves. So far, they're doing a bang-up job of bringing it on. The middle class has been destroyed. Like a deer shot through both lungs, it's dead, it just doesn't know it yet. With the elimination of most private businesses, the corporate businesses are free from any competition, and so are also free to extract what little wealth the middle class still holds. Food security is nothing more nor less than their preferred tool. Henry Kissinger was quoted as saying, "Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control whole continents. Who controls money can control the world." Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please take a second to click the like button. And as you know, friends, I rely on your donations to keep this channel functional. As you know, it takes a crazy amount of research and time to bring you this content on a daily basis, so I hope you consider helping with whatever donation you can afford. Thank you. Increasing levels of food insecurity and higher costs of food are having a substantial impact on the globe. Historic floodings have been going on in China for months and have wiped out crops on a massive scale. Global food shortages are becoming very real, and even the US grocery store chains are preparing for worst-case scenarios. The head of the UN World Food Programme repeatedly warned us that we would soon be facing famines of biblical proportions, and his predictions are now starting to become a reality. Thankfully, for the moment, the United States is in far better shape. But there have been serious shortages of certain items throughout this pandemic, and many grocery stores have had a very difficult time trying to keep their shelves full. U.S. farmers have been going bankrupt in staggering numbers during this downturn, and the federal assistance that was supposed to help them survive has mostly gone to large industrialized farms. We have entered a time when global food supplies are going to become increasingly stressed, and it is going to be absolutely critical to keep U.S. food production at the highest levels possible. What would you do if you didn't have any food to feed your family? Start learning how to grow your own vegetables, fruits, grains and beans. Maybe even how to raise your own animals to eat. Until now, we Americans have rarely thought of the need to grow our own stuff or the need to become self-sufficient. But if the grocery deliveries stop, you'll be glad you have full-fledged gardens growing. During the 30s, Americans mostly lived on farms and could survive without modern conveniences for the most part. Those in the cities migrated west in search of jobs. That isn't the case today yet. Even then, the US is in a better position than most of the world, North America being self-sufficient for the most part. The same can't be said for many of the high-density population centers around the world, including China. Yet, that is what the globalists want to bring here. Ever been to China? You can't swing a dead cat without hitting 10 people. Is that what you want in your life? It's what your globalist masters have planned. The bottom line, we need to condition personal responsibility. Decades ago, before all the government giveaways, a person was personally responsible, then relied on family, then church, then community. Ideally, we need to develop self-sufficiency and quit the handout conditioning. When the dung hits the fan, please recognize that we'll all still need to eat. Even people who don't live on farms and even people who are disinclined to put in the minimal efforts to grow their own self-sufficiency. Not everyone has the ability to grow their own vegetables. Much of the soil in this country is worn out from overproduction. Many do not know how to fertilize the ground with dried cow manure over winter before you plant. Or to allow the ground to recover at least once every few years. The unholy trinity in the foods found in our supermarkets is sodium, sugar, and unhealthy fats. This even goes for items that label themselves as healthy. Our meats are filled with antibiotics and steroids. Our veggies are GMO and filled with pest-controlling chemicals. The quicker and easier a meal is to prepare, the higher the proportions of these things that will be present. Our plants depend on the right kind of weather, some of which is in considerable disarray. Yet drip farming by ordinary people is almost unheard of. Suddenly we have crops where seed production is genetically restricted by patented seeds that after one generation are mostly sterile. Bees suddenly have a reduced population. They are necessary to growing of food. In drought, drip farming may be an answer. It has to be done right. We do need to be educated on exactly how to start small farm units in our backyards, how to store the preserves over winter to provide a steady amount of food when times are harsh. Our basic needs in this country include growing our own food. Include reasonably cheap transportation. Include reasonably cheap houses. Include reasonably cheap energy to heat and air condition our homes. There has to be a light at the end of the tunnel so that everything a person works for his entire life is not eaten up by unreasonable medical expenses, not eaten up by high real estate taxes, and not the ruin of everyone needing burial. Greed is a two-edged sword. The professional class of this country is all about stealing money for a living because they have fancy educations, and part of that is high wages as a reward for that education. It just is not necessarily so. Right now, at least half of the people seeing a doctor cannot pay for that doctor's knowledge of how to cure them of whatever is wrong. So the doctor's profession has to resort to partnerships in order to survive. Drug prescriptions are not handled right in this country, and the ante for a new drug going through the government is way too high. All of which has to change if this economic system is to survive long term. It has to be balanced with practical solutions. The books have to balance. Money is only a description of a means to efficiently trade skills for retail goods. Whether we like it or not, cheap labor is just that. And if retail goods are cheaper to produce in a foreign country, absorb the transportation cost and still be cheaper than we can make them, then labor in this country has to change that. That often means automating the labor process. With the invention of the assembly line, we made goods cheap enough for an average person to own the car. We reduced the workweek from a 6-day workweek to a 5-day workweek in the process. Massive food production by our farmers made food cheap. What I am saying here is we need to go back to things that work. Part of that change has to be the efficient use of robotics and computers. We are going to end up going to a 4-day workweek in the near future, just as we went to a 5-day workweek in the 1930s. The key to that is going to be increased production by automation. The other key is maintenance by skilled workers to make it happen. If we do not, then we will all pay for it in the destruction of this country and others. Today, with so much farmland owned by foreign interests, as well as meat producers, now add in corporate greed, how much food produced here will stay here? And notice the conveniently timed ammo shortage. I have seen shortages before, but not like this. Remember, the big corporations mostly own the ammo makers. So understand, if you do not prepare, you are really going to be on your own. For many of you, something you have never done. And for most in that group, you are not going to be any good at it. You have seen how violent things can get in the cities. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. I expect continued and accelerated insurrection, then possibly civil war. I hope I am wrong, but my gut and my spirit both say otherwise. Hope for the best and prepare for the worst. You'll never be caught flat-footed. This was the Atlantis Report. Please like, share, leave me a comment, subscribe. And please take some time to subscribe to my backup channels. I do upload videos there too. You'll find the links in the description box. You will also find a PayPal link if you want to make a donation. Thank you wholeheartedly to all those of you who have donated. Stay safe and healthy, friends.